Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 20th edition of the Coal Country Podcast. I'm your host today, Tyler Cobb, and with me, a very special guest, and it's a very special episode because it is our first ever guest on the show, Carson Fox, the host of Fox on WVU Mountaineers Sports. Carson, go ahead and tell them about what you do. Shout out your socials. Do anything and all that.
All right. Thanks, Tyler. Yeah. So I started a podcast just because everybody else was doing it and it was free. So it just seemed like a fun thing to cathartically get my Mountaineer football, basketball, baseball thoughts out of my head, really just because I have so many friends and family who are always like, how are you feeling about the Mountaineers at any given time? So it was just like, all right, let's do this. Let's give it a try. So I started about 2 years ago. Gearing up for the 2023 season because I was cautiously optimistic about that season coming off what was really just a not fun 2022 season. I just thought there's some pieces here. The schedule looks optimal. I just feel like this might be a right time. And what do you know? West Virginia wins the backyard brawl. West Virginia gets off to a pretty good start in conference play with the Texas Tech and TCU wins. And that 2023 season was a whole lot of fun. So then I dabbled here and there. You know, sometimes hard to do a show for every single basketball game just because there are so many of them. Same with baseball, but kind of talking about those couple of things. So you can find me on YouTube. If you just search Carson Fox, like WVU or something like that, you'll find my channel out there. And then on Twitter, Carson Fox or Carson_Fox 27, something like that. But super happy to be a part of the show. I got to say that, like, you are one of your group of guys. You give me motivation for this. I really love the banter that we've had back and forth on Twitter to bounce some ideas off. So it's just like really an honor and a privilege to be on your show to talk about some stuff today.
It's an honor to have you. That's honestly about how we got started going into the 2024 season. Was we were coming off of that 2023 season, 9-4 with the bowl win. There was some hype around the program going into 2024, especially that Penn State game. Was if you could start off the year with a huge win against Penn State, that 2024 year was looking special. And so just a couple of guys that like to talk football. All of us at the time were still in college and just wanted to get some thoughts out onto YouTube, and we're still going now.
Perfect.
So we're going to open up today with just like a little bit of preview, both sides of the ball, maybe a little look at the schedule and a couple game predictions. Carson's, like he said, he's probably going to drop a video next week with your game-by-game predictions, so we might not get into that, but I am looking forward to your episode as well as all of your other episodes. Starting off with the offense, You have expressed many a times in your videos that you were a avid West Virginia watcher back when Rich Wad was here the first time.
Yes.
I was barely able to understand what a first down was when that was the time. So his offense has obviously adapted and changed a little bit since then, but for the most part, it's still the same concept. Just through what that offense looks like.
So I found it actually really interesting when I was doing my research for the offensive preview show that I did a few weeks ago, in seeing that the total number of plays that West Virginia in 2007, when the all systems go, up tempo, Pat White, Steve Slayton, Noel Divino, and Schmidt offense was going, that West Virginia was running last year as many plays per game as that offense. That opened my eyes because I just remember that time period. Then I watched some old, 2004 games that I can, vaguely remember from when I was like a young lad. And then I just think to myself that the game has really changed. Rich Rodriguez, Chip Kelly, really the godfathers of of what is now the modern RPO, but really just running it out of a spread read option look. So the simplistic version, which if you've listened to the Inside the Gun series that Jed Drenning has done on the evolution of his offense, you're going to get your spread read option, read, run with the quarterback, give to the back, you get your bubble screen. And what I think we're now starting to see, and this is evidenced by what Tyler Huff was able to do last year at Jacksonville State, is a little more bomb the ball down the field. So that's what I'm excited to see, because I think everybody is now doing what Coach Rod did 20 years ago. So it has his play calling, has his offensive ingenuity involved. But most important, and this is what this team overall, not if we're just looking at the offensive side of the ball, but defensively even more so, is physicality. Is just all, using that term twice, all systems go, firepower is we need to play faster. If that's what killed me about the Neil Brown years is so slow, just getting into huddles, using 35 seconds of play clock to run motions back and forth across the field. It just seemed like when Garrett Green was calling more of a 2-minute offense, that's when West Virginia was scoring. Go back and watch that Kansas game. I watched it yesterday. And how many points that they scored? 15 points in a matter of like 3 minutes at the end of the fourth quarter there. That is what West Virginia's been missing. That's a different look that I think teams in the Big 12 have been missing since Dana Holgorsen left for Houston and Will Grier and David Sills and Gary Jennings were on the field running this offense. So if West Virginia can play faster, they can be more physical than they have been this past year. And I don't know if necessarily they're up for the task with compared to offensive linemen in, say, Zach Frazier, Doug Nestor, Wyatt Milam. I think that's tall order for this, cast of characters on the offensive line. But elsewhere, I think definitely at the wide receivers positions and blocking, and then seeing more, a change of running style from the quarterback from what we saw last year, and for the last few years in Garrett Green. He was going to beat you with his legs. He's faster than everybody on the field. Now, Nico Marchiol or Jalen Henderson, they're not going to have that breakaway speed that Garrett Green had, but they can run you over, they can run around you. And I think we're going to see a little bit more of a passing game than I was thinking even just a couple of weeks ago, based upon what Rich Rodriguez has said in some of his press conferences and what they're kind of dealing with figuring out this stable of running backs right now.
You said them both. I think those are the two buzzwords. I've got them written down in my notes: is fast and physical. You look at the defenses that Zach Alley has been a part of, they are physical defenses. And if you look at some of the guys that Rich Rod and Zach Alley have brought in through the transfer portal, a guy like Fred Perry, if you go watch some of his tape at Jack State, he hits hard. And that's what the defense under Neil Brown was kind of missing. And fast on defense, or excuse me, on offense. Rich Rod wants to go fast. He said it many a times in his press conferences is he doesn't want a bunch of fat guys in a huddle talking about football. He wants to see football. And I think that is gonna be the buzzword come August 30th is how fast is this offense going to be? If you look at some of the statistics from 2024 under Neil Brown's offense, it was 29 points a game, which kind of shocked me a little bit. I thought it was going to be far lower than that when I kind of did my prep for this video, but it was 29 points a game. If you look at last year's Jack State team, they had 36 points a game. That was first in the CUSA. If you look at yards per game, 2024 WVU had 400 yards a game. That was 10th in the Big 12. If you look at Jack State, 441 yards a game. That was first in the CUSA. Now, a bit of a talent difference there from the Big 12 to the CUSA, but point still stands is he's going to want to throw the ball. He's not going to want to throw the ball as much. Like you said, I do think he as well. He's going to want to throw a little bit more, but he's going to want to throw the ball, run the ball fast as possible. Get out of the huddle, just go. And I think that starts with the quarterback, which is I have written down as the most important storyline to watch going to Robert Morris and probably going up until September 13th when we finally figure out who is that quarterback one, is the quarterback battle. Will it be Nico or will it be Henderson? I have gone back and forth on who I think it will be. Right now, I lean Nico, but when I say I lean Nico, it is like 51-49 lean Nico. I could quite literally see it being either one of those guys. Nico, he is undefeated as the starter. Now, the competition he was starting against wasn't the most tout competition, but he still is undefeated as a starter. He's been loyal to the program, and he has proven that he does have a high ceiling. But then you look at Henderson, he is the faster of the two. And one game that stands out to me from Jalen Henderson perspective is that LSU game where he threw 25 for 35, 294 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. If you go into LSU Stadium and you're able to have that kind of game, you're obviously showing that you can have the talent too. So that's the most important storyline to me is who the quarterback's going to be, and whoever it is going to be, can they play fast, and is the ceiling as high as we think it can be for either one of those guys?
I couldn't agree more with you. I think like we've been on this similar track for the last several months now. Yes, as a Nico guy, I really like to see number 8 take the field first. But like having lived through 2005, I get it. I understand. Like we can see one quarterback play for so many games and then take over. I don't know necessarily if I agree with the assessment from Coach Rod of that. Like I could play all 5 quarterbacks at any given time. If Khalil Wilkins or Scotty Fox are coming out of the field, I'm going to think, oh my goodness, what happened? Did all 3 quarterbacks get injured? Now, I'd like to have them available. I'd like to have them healthy. But at the end of the day, I still feel as if it's going to come down to those 2 guys. And you need 2 quarterbacks. I mean, as we've seen the last few years now with Garrett Green when he would get nicked up in different games, and then Nico Marchiol would come onto the field. It's just Nico is just such a winner to me. I just am really impressed by that trait going all the way back to that game in the rainstorm at Oklahoma State in 2022 when he came in, picked up a few pivotal first downs, and led this team to victory. I think back to his high school tape of winning, what was he down, like 21 points or something with less than 5 minutes in the fourth quarter and led his high school team back to a victory. I think that he has this intangible quality that we just haven't got to see yet. And I think paralleling similarly to the mismanagement, if you want to call it that, of the quarterback position under Neil Brown, 2019 through 2021 with Jarrett Deggy, I just think, and like it was hard to make a switch, I feel like, from Garrett Green coming off what he had so good of a 2023 season, but he got banged up early. I think that was something that went unsaid, went unreported, because we don't, as of till now, have injury reports in college football. I just think he took a few shots in that Penn State game that he had lingering effects and that just added up. Finally suffered a concussion at some point in time. Either it was that Iowa State game or it was the Kansas State game.
Yeah.
Right there before the half, he exited. And if we get Nico Marchiol, who played against Arizona, I think West Virginia can be definitely a bowl eligible team or better this year. But if we get a Nico Marchiol that like we saw against Cincinnati, and somehow, some way that the defense saved the day for the Mountaineers on that given occasion, then yes, let's go to Jalen Henderson. Maybe he adds some sort of different dynamic. But I just don't want to see, Nico play a series, Jalen play a series. I mean, if we get Nico play the first half against Robert Morris, Jalen get the second half, similar kind of vibe, or the game script for Ohio, like I'll be okay with it. I won't feel as comfortable coming into the Pitt game as possible. But if it means playing Nico to the point that, okay, if he's winning or executing the offense or can be taken to a whole nother level or injury, then going to Jalen, that's what happened in 2005. It was Adam Bednarik, that he was trusted as Rich's guy, had that pedigree of, I think it was like Chuck Bednarik's grandson or something like that. Physical runner, not as fast, obviously, as Pat White, but Rod liked the way that he ran the offense. And then just so happened he gets injured there in the fourth quarter against Louisville, and Pat White leads one of the greatest comebacks in school history that changed the whole next decade worth of West Virginia football. So I'm fine either way. I think this could be one of those kinds of seasons where we get kind of a cinematic element to it, and like a quarterback controversy gives stuff like us to talk about. So
yeah, it does. You said it. I think they're going to both see the field for Robert Morris, and I would probably go as far to say they both see the field for Ohio. Rich Rod has said himself that he's learned from the past. He's having quarterbacks go live during fall camp to make that decision easier leading up to the first game of the season. We both say Nico right now. I guess we'll see. I think they both have high ceilings. It's going to be a fun race to watch leading up to what I think will be the Pitt game, is when we'll finally have that solidified quarterback one decided. Going on to skill position players, which is what Rich Rod's offense is kind of built on. You need guys that are fast and can make plays in open space. And who better to lead that skill position group than Jaheim White? He's had an incredible freshman and sophomore year. Obviously split carries with C.J. Donaldson both years. So I don't think he's reached his full potential yet. This is the year where I think you see what Jaheim White can be, especially now with the news that Jalen Knighton is no longer on the roster. We don't really have a solidified running back 2 at this point. So it's going to be a lot of Jaheim White and a lot more of Jaheim White. You're going to see a lot of carries. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in other situations as well. He's going to take a lot of hits. So one thing that is important to find out is who can be that running back 2. And I'll go ahead and say right now, we'll talk about some under the radar players. My under the radar player is Dior Hubbard. If Ty Edwards can't figure out the eligibility situation, who is the running back 2? You've got Cannon Katzer in that room. You've got Dior Hubbard in that room. You've got Sincere Bowers in that room. And so who can solidify themselves as the running back 2 behind Jaheim White? Because I think we all are very well aware that Jaheim White's going to be the number 1 option. And so my opinion is that Dior Hubbard is going to fill the shoes when Jaheim White is not on the field.
Well said. Good pick. I think it's asking a lot for someone who hasn't had over 200 plays or scrimmage plays between rushing and receiving to go out there and say, now you're going to start taking 20 to 30 carries per game. I think that's asking too much of Jaheim White personally. And having seen so many of these different combinations of backs, 2 to 3 really, during those heydays of Rodriguez, the mid 2000s of West Virginia, that I think they can figure it out. I would not be surprised if all 4 of West Virginia's players who are currently in a collaborative effort against the NCAA for eligibility to get that, given the way that court cases have gone in the sides of players over these last few years. So if you get Ty Edwards back, I like that combination between those 3. Yeah, it's very unfortunate, and it's a weird case with Jalen Knighton. I think somebody messed up somewhere. I think didn't do enough research into his background or what was happening. Was there some sort of issue that happened at SMU that West Virginia didn't know about? And this is why that's happened. I don't know. It was weird.
Yeah, it's a weird situation.
Somebody messed up there. A guy you were really counting on to be your number 2 running back. And, oh, yeah, you getting into a few days of fall camp at camp. And it's like, oh, God, we got to kick him off the team. So, like, what the heck happened there?
Yeah.
So, yeah, the guy I think obviously who's going to have to now step up is Dior Hubbard. Had a great spring by all accounts. Stayed, didn't hit the transfer portal afterwards. So if Jaheim White's going to be your guy if you're going to say take around 20 carries per game, which I think is still a lot, and then you're going to have to expect Dior Hubbard somewhere in a half dozen to 10 maybe per game, and then Ty Edwards be your short yardage guy. And can you rely on Ty Edwards if he doesn't get eligibility back until the Monday before RMU? You got to assume he's going to need about 2 weeks to get full speed again if he plays or doesn't play against RMU. Same thing against Ohio. So you're kind of just trying to figure it out between those 2 running backs to start. Maybe Sincere Bowers comes in for some sort of a home run type of play. Who is the real small running back that West Virginia had in 2018? He's like 5'6". He was from New Orleans that they used on a few trick plays, if you remember.
Yeah, I just can't think of his name.
Yeah. I think something like that. You think you try something like that, some sort of reverse, some sort of like, a swing pass or something like that to get those guys involved. If there's a guy under the radar, if you want to call it that, for this West Virginia offense, it's whoever's going to play, second string wide receiver. I feel pretty confident in some of these inside receivers that West Virginia has in Rodney Gallagher, Preston Fox, and Orrin Singleton Jr., who I guess is nicknamed Man. Never heard that one before. But who is going to be the second outside wide receiver? Because West Virginia, if you're going to trust Cam Vaughn to be your number 1 guy, who's going to fill in that Traylon Ray type of position if you're saying your Hudson Clement is now going to be Cam Vaughn? Because, man, sometimes I would get on Traylon Ray, I feel like. Maybe not so much on videos, but just watching a game. I just felt like sometimes he didn't go 100% at some given times. But I don't know if it was just a mental thing, focus in the game, or he would just get frustrated by the defense, kind of falling short. feeling as if this West Virginia offense has to score every single play, but would give up on plays too early. But man, when he was focused or the ball was, he knew was coming to him, he would go out, he'd show out, he'd make some big plays out there. So who is going to fill that second wide receiver position? And I think you and I could be at the craps table right now, just shooting dice, and anybody could come up with anything right now because we don't know that unless you've been at practice and sneaking in somehow that I haven't.
Yeah. Cam Vaughn, I think, is the clear wide receiver one. He knows Rich Rod's offense. He had a huge 2024 year. I have it written down somewhere. Yeah, 48 catches, 803 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So he is that clear number one. But then, like you said, that number two, who do you go to in a 4th and 5 in a must-have situation, or a 3rd and long in a must-have situation? Who do you throw the ball to? You brought up Man Singleton and Rodney Gallagher. I think they're going to be battling out for that slot position. A guy that I think of is Jaden Bray. We were told that he had a really good offseason heading into the 2024 season. Only had 2 catches on the year and then battled some injuries, so we didn't see a whole lot. But he was a solid wide receiver for Oklahoma State. So can he step in and finally step up and become a solidified wide receiver that you can go to in a must-have situation? I mean, he's a bigger guy. Both him and Cam Vaughn are 6'2". I know Jaden Bray's above 200 pounds, so Jaden Bray's a big wide receiver. 2 other guys you could probably look out for is Christian Hamilton, the wide receiver transfer from North Carolina, and then Justin Smith-Brown. Those are the 2 guys I think that are going to have to step up if we want this wide receiver room to be deeper than what we expect, especially because you already alluded to the fact that Rich Rod is probably going to throw it a little bit more than what he has in the past, especially considering the depth issues at running back position.
And I think you have to in the Big 12. I mean, it can't be, an Army type of game out there. As much as I'm sure he would love, if you've watched any of the old, Don Nehlen games, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, 1st down, 2nd down, 3rd down, run the ball. And I mean, heck, it was like 70% of the time that 2005 Sugar Bowl team ran the ball. But I think you have to throw the ball more in today's world of college football, especially in the Big 12, because I expect this defense to step up. I really do. I think they're going to play much better than they did overall in 2004. So it's not going to put so much pressure on this offense to have to score 7 every single time it touches the field, or you're falling back. You're not going to be able to compete in the game. I don't think we're going to necessarily see that, but you can't run. Everybody's figured that out. I mean, Kansas State knows how to do the spread read option rushing attack as well as just about anybody. And I really like Avery Johnson. Think they got a really good running back in Dylan Edwards and a really good push up front. So what more can you add? That's what I'm curious to see, because ask any West Virginia fan what they think of a Rich Rod bubble screen that is my age or older, and you'll start giving them PTSD. They'll start having nervous tics or something.
Yeah, especially if you look at the schedule. You've got TCU on the schedule. You've got Texas Tech on the schedule. I expect Pitt to have a decent offense this year. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, you're right. You can't run the ball every play and expect to score 40 points. I mean, there's going to be a lot of points scored in the Big 12 this year. And so if West Virginia wants to stand a chance, they're going to have to find some guys through the air that they can rely on and that Nico or Henderson can get the ball to. I think what has been the biggest question mark going into this season, outside of maybe some depth concerns, is the O-line. Will Nico or Henderson have enough time to drop back and actually throw the ball? And this, I made a Twitter post earlier, I don't remember if it was this week or earlier this month, about how I did not believe that there were as many position group battles going on as others believe there are, and this O-line is one of them. I would go to say that 4 out of the 5 offensive line, as far as starting on against Robert Morris, I could say right now. I think Landon Livingston is a lock to start on the offensive line, and I would say that Walter Youngbear and not Tykees Crawford, excuse me, Kimo Makaniole, I think both of them are almost solidified as Landon Livingston is. And then that gives you Tykees Crawford and Nick Cray are my other 2 picks to start at right and left tackle. I think those are your starting 5 offensive linemen going in. Now, there's still going to be some position battles. You've got Malik Agbo, Xavier Bosley, who is familiar with Rich Rod's offense, that are obviously going to be fighting for playing time. And I think you're going to have some rotations in there. But the matter of the fact is we don't have a Zach Frazier anymore. We don't have a Wyatt Milam anymore, and we don't have a Doug Nestor anymore. So it still is a position of concern going into 2025. Can the offensive line mesh? I say yes, and I'm way more high on this offensive line than other people may be, but it still is a point of concern.
Wholeheartedly agree. Of concern, maybe I don't share your optimism to that same level. When I talked with my guy Mountaineer Paul a few months ago, saying he wasn't feeling as sure about Xavier Bosley being a starter, and I just go back to about this time last year when we were like, wait a second, is Nick Malone or Xavier Bosley going to take down that right tackle position? So then when Nick Malone's now graduated, who I thought was one of the unsung heroes of last year's offensive line, man, Xavier Bosley would step in. So that's where I was like, wait a second, if he's not a penciled in kind of starter in this situation, what's happening? But if it's any sort of a combination of these tackles, Macanaole, it's just very fun to say, and Crawford, if they were two guys who were there in the spring, they've gotten more practice, they've gotten more reps. I know that offensive line is all about, that sixth sense that you have with either the guard, tackle, center next to you, and working all in conjunction together as one unit. So if those are the 5, then so be it. I'm happy. Then let's go see how it goes. But I don't think you're right. I don't think that West Virginia has any sort of an all-conference player like you definitely knew out of Milam, like you definitely knew 2 years out of both Milam and Frazier. So that's why I just think watching football as long as I have, we're going to see some sort of a step back. But if they go out there, and I mean, that's kind of why I was really hoping that Clint Trickett's dad, Rick Trickett, was going to be the offensive line coach, because my goodness, Rick Trickett would figure out a way. He's awesome. Would find a way to take all of these guys, this ragtag core of players, and make something awesome out of it. But, I'll give Jack Bicknell Jr. the, benefit of the doubt, year 1, and let's just see how it goes. But right now, I'm not very bullish on this offensive line just as of yet. But be physical, and that's all you're asked for from Rich Rod. And then, if anyone's not up to snuff, they're in with the next guy behind them. Like the Crawford situation, did a little digging into this. I guess Crawford wasn't even expected back at Arkansas last year. So he plays like 10 plays or so against Arkansas Pine Bluff, their first game, and then doesn't play the whole rest of the year. Does that strike odd to you?
That does strike a little odd. I did not know about that situation in particular. I knew he had limited time at Arkansas, but no, I did not know.
It wasn't an injury, and it doesn't sound like any sort of like a self-redshirting thing, where guys are all like, I'm going to play 4 games and then just opt out, just like didn't play.
Yeah, so that does a little odd. It kind of strikes a little bit of a red flag. I think this is where having Robert Morris and Ohio to open
preseason games,
is huge. I mean, if you throw this offensive line against a Penn State, what happens? So I think this is where having Robert Morris and Ohio to open the season is kind of huge, to see where we're at. And like you said, if somebody's not living up to expectation, get them out.
Absolutely.
So that kind of concludes the offensive side of the ball. I think we end where we started is the key is fast. It's going to be fast. There's going to be a lot of points, some depth concerns, obviously the offensive line, but Rich Rod's an offensive guy. He's going to find a way to put offensive points on the board no matter what the game is.
Spot the ball, Tyler. Spot the ball. 7 seconds.
Spot the ball and get the heck out of the way. We already said the under the radar player. Mine was Dior Hubbard, and we've already alluded to the other 3. The 3 key players to me on this side of the ball is Nico or Henderson. You're going to have good quarterback play no matter what. That's not an option. If you don't have good quarterback play, we're not going to win a lot of games this season. Jaheim, he's going to be taking a lot more hits than what he's used to. Because he was running in tandem with CJ Donaldson, it was a 1A, 1B situation. This year it is you are 1 and you're going to have a 2 to relieve you in some situations. But if we need you, you have to be out there.
Yep.
And my third is that tackle position. Who is protecting Nico or Henderson, because they're both left-handed quarterbacks? Who is protecting their blind side? Is it going to be Tykees Crawford? Is it going to be Xavier Bosley? Whoever it is, can they stick up to the competition? And so those are my 3 key players leading into 2025.
I'll just add one more to yours because I like what you have all, so I won't repeat it for time's sake. But I'm really rooting for Rodney Gallagher. I think a guy who has been a Mountaineer since he was a little kid, all that he's doing out into the community, and all that I think that, I would say the fans of, I don't want to say fans of high school football here in southwestern Pennsylvania, but he's got clout. Big social media following, especially out there in Fayette County where he's from in Uniontown, which is a little more pro West Virginia than like over toward me here in Washington County, which is still kind of 50-50, Pitt to, Penn State to West Virginia, 30%. And then going to Allegheny County, which is more so even Penn State and Pitt there. But I think that, West Virginia used to recruit really well in the WPIAL. And now it's Terry Smith has basically taken over for Penn State of any 4-star talent or better that's out of this entire region that they get toward Penn State. So if Rodney Gallagher and West Virginia collectively can succeed in 2025, I think that's going to play even better in recruiting in this area. And West Virginia can get, some better recruiting for 2027 and beyond.
Yeah, I agree. We talked about Rodney a little bit when we were talking about the wide receiver position. I think it is going to be him and Orrin Singleton battling out for that slot. But I do agree. I 100% hope that Rodney succeeds because, like you said, he's not only a West Virginia guy, but he's been loyal to West Virginia. Same goes for Nico and Jaheim. They could have jumped ship as soon as Neil Brown was fired, and they didn't. They stayed loyal to the program. And so those are the 3 guys that I look at that, hey, I want this team to succeed, and I want these 3 guys to succeed specifically because they had the opportunity and they decided to stay loyal to the old gold and blue.
Amen.
Moving on to the defense, I had a couple notes about 2024, but what else is there to say other than terrible?
Burn the tape, Tyler. Burn the tape.
Specifically to that secondary, the only thing in my head when I think about 2024, specifically that secondary, was the throw on, I think it was the 2nd and 30 throw against Pitt when there was 3 defenders in the area of 1 Pittsburgh receiver, and we couldn't make a play. 3 defenders, and we couldn't make a play.
I was right there. My seats were right there.
Mine. Like I said, I'm in the band, so I was right there watching it with you.
Wow.
Pretty close, and it was just, how do you let that happen in that situation? And so, like you said, burn the tapes, get rid of it. 2025 is a new chapter, and it's going to be led by one of the best defensive coordinators in the country, Zach Alley. You do not get a job at Oklahoma under Brent Venables without being one of the, the top highly touted coordinators in the country. And so Zach Alley, I don't care how bad the defense may or may not be this year. I think it's going to be better than most people say, but even if it is bad, it can't be worse than last year. And with Zach Alley at the helm, I think there's absolutely no chance it's worse than last year. And so starting with that secondary, and one of my key players on this team is Michael Coates Jr. from Nevada. Had an incredible 2024 season. He's going to be one of the senior leadership guys in this group. Him and Jordy Scruggs as well. They were 2 of the highest graded PFF cornerbacks in the country last year. Now, the PFF stuff can get a little fishy. We see it kind of have some weird rankings sometimes. But Michael Coates, he's going to be one of the leaders on this defense. I hope that we don't have another Garnett Hollis situation where it's like we get all this hype going into 2024. He's going to be the clear cornerback 1, locked down, straps all the time, and it ends up not working out. But I don't have that feeling about Michael Coates. We keep talking about fast and physical. He's one of those guys. He's going to play fast. He's going to be physical. He's going to have your wide receiver 1 on lockdown all game long, and that's what the defense starts with is, can this secondary be better than what it was last year? I don't know how it could be worse, but can it be better?
Oh, definitely it'll be better. I mean,
Yeah.
even though the 2013 defense wasn't so much better than 2012, you get Pat Miller out of that defensive secondary, and it's addition by subtraction. And that's exactly how I feel about Garnett Hollis Jr. and Dantes Fagan being out of there. And you flood that position in recruiting. I mean, what they've done in bringing in all of the cornerbacks that they have, I feel much more confident about that position group being 2 to 3 deep for sure of
Oh, yeah.
guys you throw out in there, But I agree. I think the highest quality player out of those two were Scruggs and Coach Jr. And why I was so intrigued over the summer because I have no life and I can constantly refresh the West Virginia roster to see things like height, weight, differentiation, and positions. Is I saw Michael Carter Jr. was switched from corner after spring practice over to safety, and I thought to myself, wait a second. If he was one of Rich Rod's guys at the cornerback position starting last year at Jacksonville State, why do you feel that comfortable about Scruggs and Coates being your number one? So I'm doing a little bit of reading between the lines there, but I think that's the case. I think they like those two guys at CB1 and 2. They're comfortable enough of moving Carter Jr. to one of the safety positions. So, wow. Okay, that makes you a little bit, have a little more depth at that safety position because I'm a little bit concerned if it's free safety, strong safety. You feel good about the way Kakura Tarnu played over the back half of 2024 to say, okay, if he's going to be your starting free safety or strong safety, you got Fred Perry at your nickel. Then who's that third guy? Is it Michael Carter? Is it Justin Harrington if he ends up getting eligibility quickly? Is it Jordan Walker who was there for spring practice? Who's that third safety? Because that, as we've seen, like when Aiden Garnes got completely picked on all up against that Penn State game, so bad that we barely saw him again all season. If you have a weak link, opponents will find that weak link and they will exploit it. So, it has to be one single impenetrable unit all across all 5 positions in the defensive secondary that there is no weak link the teams can exploit. So that's kind of where I'm wondering. And again, I think it's going to be I'm so glad for this preseason between RMU and Ohio that West Virginia can figure some things out because that's a little. But to go back to your point, Tyler, this secondary can't be any worse. So by conclusion, they will be better. Are we expecting a defense that's in the top 60? I think they could be around top 60, top 50 in the country, scoring defense, total defense.
It'll be close. You've heard Zach Alley and Rich Rod talk all season that they want to be aggressive and they want to force more turnovers. I think they've got the personnel for it. Like you brought up the Carter situation. It is a little odd, but it could be either a really good thing, really bad thing. But I agree with you. I think that they're just so comfortable with Michael Coach Jr. and with Jordy Scruggs. I think you'll see some of Jason Chambers as well at that corner position that they were comfortable moving him over to safety. And the point that I wanted to bring up is they brought in so many secondary pieces, and then pretty much the only 2 guys that you have that returned that got, I don't want to say significant playing time because the second guy didn't really get significant playing time outside of special teams, but it was Kiki Tarnu and Zay Jennings, who's listed as another nickel safety.
Yeah.
And so there are so many guys, and you have the coordinator to weed out the weak. You've got Zach Alley at the helm. He's not going to let this defense be mediocre or bad. Like, this defense is, if you can't play, you are not going to play. And so I agree with you. I think it could float around the top 60, maybe even get into the top 50, but we're going to keep pointing back to it cannot be any worse than what last year's was.
So what I'm most worried about, to let you in on it, and I'm glad I'm seeing more articles coming up about this over the last couple of weeks, is communication. Is because these guys haven't played together as much. But yeah, you say a Carter Jr. at one safety next to Tarnu, who did play a couple of seasons ago together at Jacksonville State. is just the communication, the calls between the two. If we're going to see more man versus zone coverage, but if we're in zone coverage, it's okay. It's got to be better communication than it was last year between the safeties and the corners, especially if you have multiple guys coming through the zone. Who's taking who? Because that's where teams are really taking advantage of West Virginia deep, is there would just be a little bit of miscommunication between an Anthony Wilson and a Garnet Hollis Jr., who was burnt toast is what I nicknamed him, who would they'd go deep. They wouldn't be in good, like they wouldn't be on each other's page. One would do one thing when the other expected to do the other thing, and it'd leave somebody wide open. So that's what's got to be there. And given apparently that Zach Alley's defense is so complex, it reminds you of a pre-calculus test, then all of these guys have to know what each other are doing to be on the same page. I don't like so much sometimes when it has to be a thinking man's game, because you're slow to react. If you're thinking about what you're doing on the field rather than just see ball, get ball, then you're slow. And that, as we've seen before, you're just a step slow at any given position. Somebody's trying to take advantage of you. So that's where I hope the calls between all three levels of the defense, they're all on the same page. They're working in tandem together, because there's so much newness. I think if Zach Alley's around next year, man, we could be talking about a really, really, really good West Virginia defense, especially what they do in recruiting. But for right now, I would rather them start kind of like how I think the offense is, in baby steps, get to a base defense, throw in a few wrinkles here and there, rather than kind of be like the 2018 defense, where was super, super aggressive. Don't get me wrong, but man, Sam Ellinger is just going to throw up prayers up to Jordan Humphrey, and they're going to catch balls one-on-one, and you're still giving up 40 points. So that's where I'm a little bit like, that's what I want to see, how that communication goes between those units.
And that again goes back to having Robert Morris and Ohio to test out the secondary, the communication between all these guys, whether you're safety, whether you're corner, and to figure out how they all mesh together is huge opening up the season. That kind of takes us into the linebacker spot, where you've got pretty much the most snaps returned out of any position on the field in Reed Carrico and Ben Cutter. You still bring in Chase Wilson, who I think you're going to see a lot of this year. He's a very experienced quarterback, has a lot of tackles under his belt. Did I say quarterback? Quarterback of the defense, linebacker. You've got Chase Wilson, you've got Reed Carrico and Ben Cutter returning. And then the other guys that I have listed down to watch out for is Ben Bogle and John Lewis. I'll be honest, the linebacker group was one that I was a little concerned about, and still am concerned about leading into this year. I was super high on Josiah Trotter. I think if he stayed around, he would have been the leader of this defense. That was, in my opinion, probably the worst loss of the offseason was Josiah Trotter. Despite as good as as not good as he played in the passing game, he was an elite player in the run game. And I think he had the tools to develop a pass defense a game that he kind of lacked in 2024. But that was a huge loss. And so can one of Chase Wilson or Reed Carrico or Ben Cutter, can one of them step up and be the leader of that linebacking core?
So here's what I think about the linebackers. And this is, I've just kind of crystallized this thought over the last 7 days. So you might say, Carson, you're a madman. But I think we're going to see more of a four-man front on the defensive line, which for someone who has wanted this for probably 20 years, I am so, so thankful, because I think West Virginia may finally have the pieces to be able to do it. If you get eligibility for Jamori Robinson, who has the best case of all four players who are currently in this lawsuit against the NCAA, you stack him on one side, Eddie Kelly on the other, and you can go Hammond Russell and Eddie Vesterinen across your four. There you go. So then you only have to start two linebackers. And if you got two tackling machines, who I think you will, and one in Wilson and one in Carrico, you run a 4-2-5. And I know that you can be multiple. But that is going to be heavy enough against some of these ground and pound teams that West Virginia is going to face in 2025. And it gives you that flexibility in the secondary still to keep 5 guys on the field. So to be multiple, if you want, like you said, you have your nickel and Fred Perry playing down into the box. You can do that. So it still looks more, it can look like a 4-3. So I think they have, again, if they get Robinson, they got to get Robinson. If they get him, I think they have the personnel to be able to be multiple like Allie wants to be and have a 4-2-5. If not, then I don't necessarily feel as comfortable and still traditionally maybe going with that 3-3-5, which I know would make Jeff Castile very happy, and have Braden Siders come in as your bandit kind of outside rush linebacker like we saw out of last year's Jordan Leslie-led defense, which that would be the last time his name comes out of my mouth.
I remember watching some of your episodes in 23 and 24 and just screaming that you wanted the 4-2-5 out of Neil Brown, Jordan Leslie, and that defense. And it feels like that's never something that West Virginia was ever going to do under the Neil Brown led team.
But they did that. They did that at the end of 2023 and worked successfully.
Yeah.
And Brown said that in his press conferences, like, "Oh yeah, we've been a 4-man front." I was like, "No, you're not." But you look good, and then come start the season, we have a 3-man front, and Nick Singleton and Katron Allen are running down for Penn State's running down West Virginia's throat, and you need that. You need a heavier box. You just do. I watched the Kansas game, as I said last year. The first tackle or touchdown that Kansas had, Devin Neal just gashed West Virginia right up the middle, and it's because you have two crashing down guards with your center, leaving, just you crush the first guy, your middle linebacker right there on an island, and you're running right through him. So that's where I would love to see a true 4-2-5. You see that with some of these SEC programs who are able to, again, just pluck a 300-pound lineman out of the fields of in deep South Alabama and throw him out like a Mount Cody out onto the field and do that. So I hope with West Virginia finally does have that kind of depth. But if you go with 3 linebackers across the front, I think they have the depth right now. Can't suffer too many injuries. I can't believe we're pulling guys off the scrap heap from Oregon State to try and just fill roster positions out there. But that's kind of where we're at this point in time, is trying to go 3 deep at every single position group.
You said I'd call you crazy, but I couldn't agree more. I want to see the four-man front. The first game that you look at on the schedule that is really a test is that Pitt game, and who've they got in the backfield? They've got Des Reed in the backfield, who is going to be a seriously good running back this year. And so if you put 3 guys on the line and just have that outside linebacker kind of playing that 4th D lineman role, I don't think it's going to work. I love the idea of playing the true 4-2-5. Like you said, you've got to get Jamori Robinson for that to work. He has to be one of those edge rushers. I'm really high on Eddie V. He was supposed to have a really good season last season before that injury, so I'm really high on him. Eddie V. Not Eddie V. I just said Eddie V. Eddie Kelly is another guy out of Missouri. I think that could play a huge role. And so, yeah, with Zach Alley at the helm, I think you have the pieces to go to a 4-2-5. And so that's what I want to see, especially because, like I said, I'm not as high on this linebacker core. I think that's probably one of the weakest spots on the roster. And so if you lean more into having the 4 down linemen, that could help out the linebackers a lot.
And it helps create pressure. If it helps create pressure, it's a reciprocal effect with your secondary. It helps in pass coverage. It does leave you susceptible over the middle of the field. But if you feel pretty good in the coverage ability and, tackling out of coverage that Carrico and Wilson can bring to you, or try, Bogle in that middle and Cutter, I think you're able to do that. But you have to be able to have the defensive line to be able to do that. I don't think, as much as what Neil Brown and staff would say, I don't think they felt much more confident between past TJ Jackson, Fator Mamolba, and Sean Martin last year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I've probably brought it up 3 or 4 times now, but what happens during that Robert Morris game and that Ohio game is gonna kind of set the tone. Can the defense mesh? Can these concepts work? Is Zach Alley's defense going to be too complicated for the pieces that we have in place, or can he play a 4-2-5?
Amen.
Jamori Robinson is going to be the key to that. Can we get him back? That's my first key player. Will he be eligible? If he is, he's going to be that TJ Jackson kind of type player from last year, the guy on the defensive front that's just causing havoc in the backfield. He might not be the one getting the sack every play, but if they have to double Jamori, that's giving somebody else an opportunity. And so he is the guy that is going to have to come back, and him and Michael Coates are going to have to be the leaders of the defense. And then the third key player for me is either Reed Carrico or Chase Wilson, who can be the leader of that linebacker core that I'm not a huge guy. Like I said, I'm not high on this year. Can one of them step up, be a good solid middle linebacker, and be the leader of that linebacker core that doesn't have as much depth? If there is an injury or two, we've got problems.
I'll add one more because I like all three that you had too. I'll add Fred Perry. I think he may lead West Virginia in tackles this year. I think if West Virginia would have got both he and Zach Poyser, who ended up choosing LSU from Jacksonville State, we'd be talking about one of the nastier defenses, if not the nastiest in the Big 12. But from what Perry did, of the few highlights that I did get to see, because I didn't get to attend the spring game in person, sounds like he was all over the ball. Good tackler, not afraid out there. So if he can come in there and be a presence who's collecting you close to 10 tackles per game out of the secondary and kind of manning the defense in the similar fashion that Aubrey Burks did for West Virginia over the last few seasons before he went down with injury, I really like what Fred Perry can bring to the table too.
Yeah, everything you said, and Fred Perry is the tone setter, if you will. He's got we keep talking about the physicality. Is if you need a tone setter, somebody to go out there and just absolutely rip somebody's head off, Fred Perry's going to go out there and do it. That kind of wraps up the defense as well. It can't go downhill. We're at the bottom, so we can only go up. I like what you said about float around that top 60, maybe leak into the top 50, but the future is what is promising to me because the simple fact that you have Zach Alley. Moving on to special teams, we don't have to spend too much time because it's
whoa. Do not skimp on special teams. If we're talking about a breakdown of Australian punters, then that's the second most thing I like to talk about between 300-pound defensive linemen.
Hey, they're just as important. Yep. Not as many players. You've got your punter, your kicker, your kickoff specialist, and then obviously everybody else who plays on special teams.
And we have a huge position group battle here between Kellen Seller and McGuire Moss at long snapper. So whoever wins that position is going to determine this grade either from a B to an A.
All I ask is, please, for the love of everything good and holy, kick the ball through the end zone.
End zone, always.
If I special teams is just as important as the offensive defense. The only thing I care about is if we can kick it through the freaking end zone. Every game, it felt like I was bringing that up during the Neil Brown tenure. After we started this little Cold Country podcast, it felt like every game. Why is Neil Brown not kicking the ball through the end zone? Why is he trying to do this little cute corner crap, and they end up getting 40 yards on the kickoff, and they have good field position starting the game? And then the other thing was, why are we taking the ball to start the game with? If those were the two things, is we always, every time he had the option, he wanted the ball, and we never kicked the ball through the end zone. Mm-hmm. I feel confident in Oliver Straw's ability to punt the ball. He's obviously shown he's one of the best punters in the Big 12, not only the Big 12, one of the best punters in the nation. You've got Cade Hensley and Ethan Head at the kicker position. Just kick it through the end zone is all I ask.
Well, to focus on another aspect is Michael Hayes. Michael Hayes was money inside 40 yards. Didn't miss a kick inside 40 yards for 2 seasons. I think he only missed 1 or 2 kicks in 2 years. So, deadly accurate, might not have had the strong of like a Tyler Bittenkurt or some of the other kickers of old. But I will be curious to see, is Cade Hensley as accurate? Can you count on him inside 40 yards to nail you a field goal in any kind of conditions, home versus road? If you got 50,000 people screaming at you, it's a whole different environment. So that's where I'm looking in special teams. And is Preston Fox healthy? Because I always root for both Mountaineers, but Rodney Gallagher has not beaten out Preston Fox at that slot receiver over the last 2 seasons. Held him back in his development a little bit just because of that competition between the two. But it's a healthy competition. Preston Fox is a baller, has those, highlight reel catches in traffic. So, I'm totally cool with it. But who maybe has the higher ceiling in Gallagher? I love Fox as a returner. I mean, the guy when you need he's practically saved that Cincinnati game with some of his returns that he had, both on kickoff, and he has absolutely no fear in the punt returning game. So if, again, you're trying to figure out 6, 7 wide receivers to maybe have 3 on game day, I'd rather have Preston Fox at a completely 100% in the return game, and that is solely what he's focused on for 2025. Because, again, can be one of the best returners in the country. I mean, look at his per game return yard averages, and he's one of the best in the Big 12, both kickoffs and punt returns. So that's what I want him to bring to the table for 2025.
You mentioned the Cincinnati game. It felt like almost every game we played last year, the punt and return from Preston Fox being able to set us up in short field situations did play a huge role. And so having Preston Fox come back to the team after previously saying that he had planned on retiring is huge, because like you said, he's going to be one of the better returners, not only in the Big 12, but in the country. And so, yeah, I do agree. Having Preston Fox, I do want Rodney to succeed as well, but having Preston Fox in that position is going to be very, very important. And like you said, having Michael Hayes be pretty much money inside of the 40-yard line is – Cade Hensley going to be that? Can he be accurate? I don't know how. Like you said, this offense is going to be fast. We don't know how many times we're going to have the opportunity to kick a field goal, but when that opportunity arises, it has to happen. That's got to be a point of concern as well, because how good Michael Hayes has been in the past couple of years.
And Hensley's from Coastal Carolina. Shout out Myrtle Beach.
There you go. Dirty Myrtle, the best place on earth outside of Morgantown. The last little thing I wanted to bring up was a little bit of the schedule preview. I've got the schedule here for us. I don't want you to take away from your own show, so I don't really want to have you go game by game predictions per se, but what is the ceiling versus floor for you? I wouldn't say it's particularly a tough schedule, but I also wouldn't say it's a particularly easy schedule. And there's so many unknowns with 70 new players that what do you even say?
Right. I think this is one of the craziest psychological experiments in recent college football history. And we've had an Indiana team last year go from, worst to first or whatever their record was in 23 to an 11-1 team in 24. But then you see Colorado a couple of seasons ago, basement, and they could only get to 4 wins. So, I hate to be that guy who's kind of like lukewarm, sticking in the middle, but somewhere I feel really good about somewhere in between 4-8 and 8-4, which is kind of where West Virginia, has kind of been for around a decade. But it's just like there are just a few teams. I'm going to go to the game at Arizona State. That's where my brother went to. So we're kind of going to make like a family vacation out of that and go to that game. I don't feel really great about that game, at least on paper. I really like both them and Texas Tech is 1 and 2 on paper coming into the season in the Big 12. And doing more research, listening to more shows, I know that Utah was really bad last year. When Cam Rising went down, their season went into the tubes. Couldn't pick up a first down offensively, but I really like what they have coming back on their offensive line. They bolstered their skill position recruiting, and their defense is still going to be somewhere in the ballpark of the top 50, top 60. So it's like those are the three toughest opponents I feel like West Virginia has on paper right now. And so goes the season as the backyard brawl goes, as we saw in 2022 and 2024. You lose that game, like you don't feel as confident coming into a really tough stretch there at the end of September at Kansas, home for Utah, and then a quick 6-day turnaround going on the road, 4,700 feet up into the air altitude, trying to breathe there in Lavelle Edwards Stadium as those crazy sober Mormons are on Friday nights. I don't know what they do all day on their Fridays to be that loco that evening, but that's what seems to happen with no alcohol needed. So it's like, man, I just see some forks in the road. The first one obviously being the Pitt game. And then kind of that similarly like we had in 2023 with Texas Tech and TCU in those back-to-back weeks, like that stretch right there at the end of September. I feel very confident about UCF, Houston, and Colorado. I not so much about those other three games because TCU, dang it, they really play West Virginia tough in Morgantown. So I don't know why they just like the Horned Frogs have just been a thorn in West Virginia's side. Previously it was Baylor, who we always beat at home, but then lost this past season. So yeah, from terms of not the hardest schedule in the world, but certainly not the easiest of times, where it's really going to make or break this season are those the games that I mentioned there. I think Pitt, Kansas, Utah, BYU, TCU, ASU, Texas Tech. But those other five, I feel pretty confident about, at least right now.
I'll say a little bit lower floor than what you're saying, and maybe a little bit higher ceiling. I'll go from 3-9 to 9-3 just to switch it up. I'll be honest, I was going to go 4-8, 8-4, but who likes a copycat? I'll be honest, the only three guaranteed wins I see on this schedule, and I would almost go as far to say as two, is Robert Morris in Ohio. Now, I don't think Ohio is as much as a trap game as people say, simply because of the talent discrepancy between Ohio and ourselves. And then Ohio is obviously dealing with having first-year head coach as well.
Yep.
I don't see it as much as a trap game as others. It still could be a tricky environment to go into. That's going to be a sold-out game. It's going to be a huge game for the Ohio program. I still think we walk out of there with a win. You beat Robert Morris. You beat Ohio. Moving forward, your quote-unquote easy games are on the road. UCF should be an easy game, but the bounce house, if Scott Frost has that program going in the right direction, the bounce house, I agree. I don't think UCF is going to be much this year, and I have it down as a win thus far. But if Scott Frost can figure some things out, the bounce house could be rocking, and UCF could be a tough place to go into. And then the Houston game is pretty much the only other quote-unquote easy game on the schedule. We all remember what happened in 23 when it should have been a walk in the park, and Houston ends up winning on a Hail Mary. Like I said, I've got both the UCF game and Houston game down as a win, but those could very easily be turned into losses if this team is the absolute floor of what we think it can be. But then from the flip side, if you look at the ceiling, you do have Houston and UCF, even though they are on the road. Those are two opponents that you should be better than. That brings you to 4 wins. Kansas, they're going to be in their new stadium. It'll be their first Big 12 game in their new stadium. I would still consider that a win. I think we're better than Kansas. They obviously lose Devin Neal, their best rusher of all time. They lose their top 3 receivers. They lose a lot of their secondary and Mello Dotson and Kobe Bryant. And so that gets you to 5 wins. And then the other ones are essentially coin flips outside of maybe Arizona State and Texas Tech. Arizona State is, in my book, a guaranteed loss. I don't think there's any way you travel to Arizona and win a game against a team that is that talented, fresh off of a Big 12 championship. Texas Tech on paper, like you said, is 1-2 to Arizona State. Lavelle Edwards is going to be a tough place to play. But again, they're pretty much all coin flips. And so if everything goes right, and like you said, that backyard brawl is going to be the tone setter. If you can find a way to get a win in Pitt or against Pitt on September 30th, I like what the momentum has us doing going into this 2025 season.
Well, what do you think if they're 4-0 coming into that home Utah game?
Oof, okay.
You win the backyard brawl close.
Yeah. So
you
this
win
is
close at Kansas, so it seems it always goes. You're 4-0 at home against Utah, having never, played in Morgantown before. They got Devin Dampier, Parker, big offensive line, as I said, pretty tough defense. What do you think the spot on it that is coming into the game?
If you're 4-0 going into that game, keep this on the DL, even though I'm saying it out loud. Can't say how I know or why I know, and can't confirm it. I have a strong suspicion that Utah will be the Coal Rush game this year.
Ooh, okay.
And so if you're 4-0 and you've got a Coal Rush, a packed Morgantown Milan Puskar Stadium, I like your chances.
And then you win that. Are you saying
sure, 5-0?
Are you saying then on 6 days rest, they're going to go to those crazy Mormons coming into a bye, beat them? And here's the thing. I think if West Virginia can beat Pitt, Kansas, and Utah, then I feel really good about winning even at BYU, because I think BYU is going to take a step back this year. I think Jake Retzloff, that not only just for, production on the field psychologically, he's your senior starting quarterback. Took you to 10 wins last year. They were riding high. And then, say what you want about BYU's honor code and that whole weird situation that went down. But you're now losing him. I mean, BYU, I think, rides the wave just about as much as any program in the country. They have a really, really great year, and then they take a step back. West Virginia crushed them in Morgantown 2 seasons ago. So you're going to their place, yes. But if you can beat, again, Pitt, Kansas, Utah, I like their chances against BYU. Are we talking about a 6-0 potentially going into mid-October bye week?
And look who you play after that.
Exactly. Then you hit a nice little stretch. That's TCU's homecoming.
It's definitely interesting. That's why I almost want to say that it's not necessarily it's not an easy schedule, but it's also not a difficult schedule as well. There's obviously still the potential for game day to be there against Pitt as well.
Yeah.
So if you've got a bump in Morgantown for Pitt, come out of there with a win. You go on the road to beat Kansas with a win. You find a way against Utah, BYU. You're looking at 7-0 to start the season, go into homecoming.
So maybe it's just like the Bobby Bowden curse in me that just tells me there will be some stumbles where I'm not necessarily expecting them. Like, my goodness, Carson, you're picking Rich Rod to take this team to near a conference championship in year 1. But it's like, if you get some few breaks here and there and you have the depth to be able to do it, which West Virginia clearly did not have that depth there for 6 seasons under Neil Brown. If you have injuries and can fill them with players who have a higher floor than what West Virginia had in previous years, then maybe they don't take the injury bug, the bumps and the bruises that you've seen through the first half of the season to get better in the second half. And that's exactly what happened with Jacksonville State last year. Caught fire, beat a Liberty team when they needed to. I think it was Liberty. And they caught fire from there, rode that to a conference championship, and then, peaked when you absolutely needed to put together this magical season. So it's like, maybe he's figured something out that, the whole is better than the sum of its parts with how much you have at depth. And West Virginia is not playing in a Texas, an Ohio State, a Georgia. They're not playing some sort of juggernaut. I mean, how many teams are in the AP poll to start out the year? Is it just Arizona State and Texas Tech?
I think there was 4. It was Arizona State, Texas Tech. I want to say Kansas State was in there.
But Kansas State's, they're not playing.
Yeah, they're not playing.
They're not playing.
I know BYU was in the coaches poll, but like you bring up, the whole Jake Retzloff situation is you don't really know what BYU is going to be this year.
Right.
And that's how the whole Big 12 is as much as I love Arizona State and they have the talent to run it back, the Cam Scatterbu loss is going to be huge. Like, you can't just overlook that.
Huge.
And so if Arizona State falls off, okay, then maybe you can go into Arizona and win a game against a team that you thought you had no chance against in the preseason.
That's why I tell you I hate these prediction shows. Gotta do them because people love them. Eat that stuff up, and I want to do it just more so for credibility. To do the research. I feel like I try and do the best that I can. You know, when people listen to me talk, like, okay, I'm just not some jag just saying whatever out there, but like actually give you some, you know, some quality to what you're talking about. And right, I don't think that we're so far off to say that, like you said, go from a 3-9 team that right now everybody's kind of picking to feel that way, even though West Virginia hasn't had that bad of a season since 2001. My goodness. So they could have some sort of magical first year. I mean, nobody was saying that about Indiana this time a year ago. So we're not so far-fetched here, Tyler.
No, I completely agree. I'm going to try to keep my head on and not say that. And I just don't want to put everybody's, including my own, expectations to, hey, let's go win the Big 12 in year one. But I also don't want to say that, yeah, West Virginia is one of the top 20, top 15 programs in the country. We're not going to fall off that bad. We're not going to end up being 2-10, 3-9, like what the media seems to think we're going to end up being this year. I think we'll float around that 6-6, 7-5 range. Win a game that you're not supposed to, maybe lose a game that you're not supposed to, hopefully not. What I'm more concerned about is, win or lose, are we going out there and playing with an edge that we did not have during the Neil Brown era? You brought this up one day on your show during the 2024 season that I had commented on one of your videos. Being in the band, I got to be down on the sideline during halftime, and you could tell during that 2024 season that the players were defeated. At that point, there was not really a desire to play the game anymore. It just kind of felt like, okay, the season's over. Is that what we're going to see down the stretch of this season? Or if we get that 5th or 6th win, you know, sometime in October, and the team thinks they can get to 7 or 8 or 9 wins, are they going to continue to fight down the stretch?
Here's what I'll say to that is, I think if at the worst case for 2025 is you will find your best 300, if you've seen that movie from the mid-2000s, for then 2026, who hopefully have more eligibility. Because, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of one-year guys. So if there was an attitude and a mentality of just cashing an NIL check by the players on that team last year, could have been, you've siphoned most of those out to graduation, to the transfer portal, whole new mentality. But if this season wins and losses goes south, what I want to see is, I want to see who are those guys, to your point, of who are still going to fight for 4 quarters, not give up, battered, bruised. I don't care whether you're getting an NIL check or not. Then you feel really confident about where those guys to then add in the portal in high school recruiting for 2026. I just don't want to see a situation like a Florida State last year, where if you feel like the season's going south quick, that they just give up. And I don't think we're going to get that again, because there's not an opponent on this schedule. You know, again, even for how good as I think Utah is, how good I think Arizona State and Texas Tech are, that just, you know, one off there. Everybody else, West Virginia, talent-wise, is competitive on an even field. And I feel very confident, again, about RMU, Ohio, and even more so about UCF and Houston. So now it's just to go out there and prove it. Truly go out there and compete and prove it.
There is no Penn State. There is no Penn State. And so every game's winnable. That also, of course, means every game's losable.
Yeah.
So it is about, like you said, weeding out the weak. Who is going to be those guys that's going to play all 4 quarters, no matter the situation, no matter the point in the season. And I hope that it ends up being the ball finally falls in West Virginia's favor for once. It feels like we've had it fall the opposite direction for so many years now. Will it fall? Will the light shine on West Virginia again? I'm going to say yes. with
Amen,
some
brother.
Going to say yes with some optimism. Carson, it was awesome having you on the show today. You were a spectacular guest. I'm honored to have you as the very first guest on the Cold Country podcast. If you want to, go ahead and shout out your show again, your socials for all of those watching to be able to find you.
Thanks for having me, Tyler. It's awesome. We'll do this again sometime. We're going to have a lot to talk about, as I always like to say. So never a dull moment being a West Virginia fan. There's always something to talk about. But, yeah, just catch me on YouTube, Fox on West Virginia Mountaineers Sports, and tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog that I do it each and every week and have a lot of fun doing it.
Awesome, man. Like I said, thanks for coming on the show. Honor to have you. To all the viewers, thank you for watching the 20th edition of the Cold Country podcast. We're going to continue to make episodes and hopefully have the other boys back on, Ian, Matt, and Max. Hopefully they'll be back on the next episode. We'll have our actual schedule prediction game by game out soon, and we'll be doing our post-game and pre-game shows coming to you soon as the season gets started. We got 6 days till game 1. Kansas State and Iowa State kicks off in week 0 coming soon. So look forward to our episode for that. Until then, it was good. See you next time from the Cold Country crew and Carson Fox.
Hail West Virginia.